Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah, you have two sessions this morning. One is on governance and one is on emerging markets. So I'm starting with the less sexy one, investment governance. But you will see during this presentation that investment governance is actually very, very important for all type of asset owners, also for family offices. So I have the luxury to work since a number of years now as an investment consultant with mainly long-term asset owners. Much more fun, to be honest, than with more medium-term asset owners. So focus on endowments, foundations, family offices, sovereign wealth funds, central banks, state pension funds as well. That is the type of investors I'm dealing with, mainly in Europe, but also in the Middle East. So, excellence in investment governance and decision-making as a driver of return for family offices. You would not expect governance to be really a driver of return, but I hope I will convince you during this presentation. So we will first look at some initial considerations about where the family office world sits in the wider investment universe. Then I will introduce investment governance as a topic. What is it? Why is it important? We will also look at a few horror stories, very interesting ones, one from the endowments and foundations world and one from the family office world. We will look at different governance models for single family offices, and then we will finish with a number of elements for a robust single family office investment governance framework, just a few ones because we are limited in time. Initial considerations about where family offices sit in the whole investment universe. Well, you know, pension funds are really the big ones in the investment world, insurance companies as well. Those numbers are just estimates. It's very difficult to find the total value of all those different segments in the investment industry or asset owners industry, but it gives an idea. And more importantly, you need to look at it next to each other. Sovereign wealth funds about 11 trillion, endowments and foundations much smaller globally, about 2 trillion. But then you have private wealth. Private wealth is absolutely massive. It's very difficult to find an exact number for that, but well, here you go, 10 times bigger than pension funds. What is above 1 billion portfolios is about between 10 and 15 trillion, let's say. Let's say that's more or less what you have in terms of family offices. So what makes family offices so different from other asset owners? You have a number of elements here, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. The investment horizon is very different from a number of other asset owners. It's multi-generational, it's fundamentally long-term driven, and that has an enormous impact on how you construct portfolios and what type of risks you can take and what type of returns you can generate. The objectives are also very different, with always a balance between capital preservation on the one hand and growth of the portfolio. Depends very much from one organization to another. Regulation and constraints completely different from the pension world and the insurance world. It's nearly inexistent or light or self-inflicted with family offices. The focus is very much on preserving the capital of the family in real terms for the long term. So inflation can eat your capital very quickly, as we have seen in a few years ago in recent past. So that is a focus certainly for this segment. And then in terms of portfolio construction, because all of this, private markets are dominant in the portfolios, impact investing is an important topic, absolute return and more global exposure than other asset owners. Now, that's for the introduction on where family offices sit in the investment horizon. Now, what is investment governance and why is it important? Well, investment governance is actually, it refers to the framework and all the processes you have in place to guide your decision-making in investments and the oversight you have on your investments within your organization. that is a definition of investment governance. So it involves having very clear roles, responsibilities, having procedures in place, ensuring that the investment decisions you're taking are aligned with your objectives, your risk tolerance, and whatever requirements you have. Doesn't sound very sexy, but it is very important, because it will really make a difference. If you have a strong governance, it will make a difference in terms of return and in terms of how agile you can be in your portfolio. So why is investment governance so important? First of all, it is a guarantee for alignment with the objectives of your organization. It's also a very important tool for risk management. It helps you to comply with industry standards. It gives transparency and accountability within the organization. Performance monitoring and evaluation will be better done with a strong investment governance than a lesser one. And last but not least, stakeholder confidence is extremely key in all this, especially when you are managing money for a family. Making sure that all the stakeholders, all the family members are on board and have confidence and trust in what you are doing will be much easier with a strong investment governance framework than with a weak one. When we explain our investment philosophy at Mercer, we like to show this. I will not go into the tiny text there, but just showing that client objectives are at the center of everything when you are managing a portfolio. That's quite evident. And the three pillars under that are strong governance, rewarded risk, and maximizing of value. Now, strong governance is the framework you need to achieve all this. Rewarded risk is quite simple to understand. You can only have return if you take risk, and you will only take risk when it is rewarded with an adequate return for the risk you take. And the objective is also to maximize the value of your portfolio. Now, there is something as a governance challenge with asset owners in the investment industry. This is just a representation of how much impact different decisions have and how much resources those decisions or aspects of investments are taking in your organization. And we are always, when we're working with clients, we are always surprised about how much resources are used for elements that are less important or that have, or they are important, but they have less impact financially on the portfolio. The best example is performance reporting. There are probably a lot of people in this room that needs to spend a lot of time on reporting and monitoring of portfolio. Very often it's done even by investment people. Very well-paid investment professional needs to do that because it's a small team, etc. Well, the financial impact is not great. On the other hand, strategic asset allocation is absolutely key. It has an enormous impact on the return you will achieve. And very often we see that the resources that are utilized for that and the time spent to strategic asset allocation is relatively small compared to the financial impact. We can go in all the different elements of investment decision making here, but it's just a point I want to make. You have this discrepancy, we call it the governance challenge. And it's important to keep in mind because it's an element we see again and again with a number of asset owners. Objectives of good governance, just a few elements here. You want to have a strong governance framework to take decisions in an efficient way, to make sure that your portfolios are well diversified, you can implement in a timely way, capturing market opportunities. It's easier when you have a strong governance than without. Access to high quality investment managers and competitive fees are just a few elements I wanted to mention here. Now, I promised you some horror stories. Here are two stories that are quite amazing. Just examples of what can how bad it can be when it's really going wrong because of very weak governance in an investment organization. The first one is very well known. It's an Italian foundation, Fondazione Monte dei Paschi di Siena, major shareholder of the oldest bank in the world, the Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena. That foundation had about 7 billion of assets in 2007. They had very clear objectives. The main objective of the foundation was to deploy money to support the development of the region of Siena. That was very clearly the main objective. Secondary objective was to provide also working capital for the bank, but it was very clearly stated that this was not the primary objective. The bank made an acquisition in Italy and needed more capital, and it went very wrong. As you probably know, that bank nearly went bankrupt. So more than 70% of the assets of the foundation was actually the bank in 2006, 2007. And they lost most of their capital. So they were left in 2020 with $500 million from the nearly 7 billion before, a horror situation. So lack of focus, lack of governance, completely wrong decisions in terms of the objectives they wanted to follow, and you see the result. Another example is from the family office world. It's also linked to hedge funds. Archegos Capital, multifamily office, that was a kind of hedge fund at the same time. In March 2021, it went really wrong with the portfolio, which was very strongly concentrated on a few stocks with total return swaps, a lot of leverage. They had more than 20 billion in assets. They lost everything, and a lot of banks suffered major losses because of this disaster as well. Again, concentration of all the decisions with one man, weak governance, and you see the result. Now, we have done some research about how can you quantify very good governance and the impact of good governance on portfolios and on the returns of portfolios. It's quite difficult to do, but we came to the following conclusion that 3 elements are, in our view, really helping boosting returns by more than 1%. The first one is really the decision on the liquidity and the illiquidity budget you are using in a portfolio for a long-term asset owner. That's a big contributor. So really deciding on asset allocation and how much liquidity you are taking in a portfolio, how much you're investing in private markets has an enormous impact. And if that decision is being done in the right way, with the right governance at the right level, investment committee or board, that can have a huge impact. The second one is about diversification. That adds an additional 10 basis points in our view. And then the third one is the element of rebalancing. Having a strong rebalancing policy is helping for risk management. In a lot of organizations, this is not taken very seriously, but it really helps to have discipline and to force you to act in a risk management mindset. That can add some basis points as well. So the difference between, let's say, average to good governance or extremely good governance can be easily 1% a year for portfolios. Following topic I would like to mention are the different governance models that can be used by family offices for managing diversified portfolios. Now, there are a lot of different ways of organizing yourselves. It depends very much on a number of elements, the size of your portfolio, the team you have inside, the existing governance, etc. But schematically, I can show you 3 possible destinations. One is a single family office with an in-house investment team that is just managing the money internally completely. The second destination is with a portfolio managed by external fund managers, where the in-house investment team is actually allocating money to external portfolio managers that are then responsible for parts of the portfolio. And the third destination is one where the single family office is not really using an in-house team anymore, but is outsourcing the activity of managing the portfolio to an outsourced chief investment officer that is then responsible for allocating to external portfolio managers as well. So in reality, those three destinations or operating models are extremes. You can imagine that there are a lot of different ways of organizing this with a combination of, for instance, an in-house team with focusing on the most important decisions and working together with an OCIO. This is possible as well, and we see this more and more. So the hybrids models are present there as well in between the different destinations. This is, by the way, coming from also or similar to the pension world or other asset owners. A lot of what has been developed in terms of investment governance for the real institutional asset owners like pension funds can be used as a good model for long-term asset owners and family offices as well, even with very different investment objectives. Now, the flexible governance model can be also shown as such with the different parts of the investment decision making, from strategic asset allocation to implementation. And you can decide on what you do in-house and what you outsource following the different models I have been showing. Logically, very often the family office in-house team will keep the very interesting bits and focus on strategic asset allocation, portfolio construction, manager selection, and then outsource as much as possible the remaining bits, or working together with outsourced entities to do this in conjunction. Now, a case study, just an example of how we are working, and I've been working with an organization of about 1 billion. It was actually an individual who was very successful in his business, a former trader, had a portfolio of 1 billion and wanted to revamp his portfolio. Now, very often when we do this, we start with trying to find where the assets are and what the portfolio in say is. And you can have surprises sometimes. In this situation, it was scattered around. The guy lost quite a lot of money with some bad advice on hedge funds, and he didn't want to hear anymore about hedge funds, wanted to have a portfolio in a more traditional way. First time I met him, he said, "I know I want a return of CPI plus 20%. And I got silent. He said, "Have I said anything wrong?" I said, "Yeah, actually, you asked me for a diversified portfolio, not too much risk. You don't like emerging markets. You don't want too much private markets. And then you come with that return." He had no idea. We ended up with a CPI plus 4.5% or 5%, and he was very happy with that. That was more than enough. So that type of conversations are extremely important in the beginning of a relationship and before getting into discussing a strategic asset allocation. Now, in this situation, a lot of work had been done by tax advisors, and a lot of trust had been created, made it a bit complicated to find a way to organize the governance for this client, but we managed to do this with the creation of an investment committee that was centralizing everything and was in regular touch with the different trusts and trustees to manage the portfolio in a more holistic way than it was done before, and with clear investment objectives which were missing before we came in. So to finish this part of the morning on investment governance, I would like to go through a number of elements that are really very important to get to a robust investment governance framework. And we will start with one which is very close to my heart, is the importance of having documented investment beliefs. I don't know, you as asset owners, how many of you do have documented investment beliefs? Just show up your hands if you have. Yeah, I'm not surprised, only a few. That is something we see all the time. Actually, all investment organizations do have investment beliefs, but they are not written down. They are not documented properly. And it's extremely important because the way you think about investment markets is really driving how you are going to take decisions. If this is properly documented, has been discussed on a board level or an investment committee level, it will help you enormously in the investment decision taking later on. It will avoid to have again and again the same discussions about do we need active management or are we going to do passive for this asset class? No, you discuss it in length once, you document it, and this is the rule you are following. It's just one example, but you can do it, and you should do it, on a number of elements which are important in the way how you construct your portfolios or you want to position your portfolio. So why are those investment beliefs so important? Because it enhances the discipline and the consistency of what you're doing. It will save you a lot of time in investment committees. It will align also the interests within the organization. It's crystal clear what you want to do in the portfolios and how you want to invest. It helps with transparency with all the stakeholders, and it will lead to better investment decision making in the end. It doesn't need to be a long document, but it needs to be clear and written down. Second element towards a robust governance framework is typical for real long-term investors as you are, integrating the long-term perspective into a family office investment strategy. We look at long-term elements in this way, that you have regime changes happening, like the geopolitical elements we have now, portfolios changing as well, with fixed income getting again more interesting since a short while. That's more shorter, medium term. Then you have super cycles that are more long term in terms of inflation, in terms of different power shifts in the world. That these are really long term plays. And then you have the real very big mega trends like energy transition, nature as a theme in portfolios. Well, as a long term investor, you are in a unique situation to try to construct your portfolio taking into account those different long-term and very long-term mega trends. Not a lot of investors can do that. You have the ability to do that, and if you construct this or you embed this in your investment governance and your decision making, you are in a position to capture additional returns that others cannot capture because they are much more shorter or medium term oriented. Third element towards a robust investment governance framework is about the roles and responsibilities. And also the well-functioning investment committee. An investment committee is really a key decision-making body in each investment organization. It should also be the case for a family office with a sufficient size. So making sure that in the organization everything is clear about who is responsible and accountable for what. What should be done to operate and to oversee a portfolio, and how often should those roles and all the responsibilities linked to those roles be revisited. So typical stakeholders, of course, are the principal, the board, or the family council on the one hand, and then the investment committee. that is much more implementing the strategy that has been decided by the principal and the board or the family council. And then you have the executive team with the CEO, CIO, and the investment managers you have in-house, if that is the case, and the external advisors and the investment managers. Now, the role of each of those should be crystal clear, from more strategic to more implementation. And this should be documented as well. And this can be documented very easily. And again, that's the example of other institutional investors having an investment policy statement. Not a long document, but a document which is really your kind of Bible, which is telling anyone who needs to know how you operate a portfolio, who is responsible, how the portfolio look like, what type of risk you are taking, what type of returns you are targeting, etc. It should be a document that you give to a new employee, a new member of staff, or a new chief investment officer, and that should be sufficient to start with and to understand how the portfolio should be run. We see very often that either there is no investment policy statement in place when regulation is not asking for that, or it's very badly written and full of holes. So it's important to take the time to work on a proper document and have this. Then, of course, an investment committee charter as well. What is an investment committee doing? You should have a board charter also in such a case, but the investment committee is a key body in the organization that will take most of the investment decisions. I will skip this one. Operation functions are important, but will not go into the details of that. You can easily delegate this to outsource organizations to help you with the operational stuff, but it's important that it is done in a proper way as well. So before concluding, another case study about a family office I know since a number of years in the Middle East. It's a family office started with a very small investment team, let's say about 15 years ago, a handful of people. And it's an interesting case because I started working with them on a retainer basis, helping them with selection of managers, with strategic asset allocation. We designed the investment beliefs. We wrote basic documents as the investment policy statement for them, putting things in order, let's say. And then little by little, the organization that was Sharia driven as well, so portfolio was only investing with Sharia guidelines, but in a diversified way. And the situation evolved towards why not expanding this to manage money for other families and some institutions in the region. And they did so. They created an asset management entity that became the in-house asset manager, but also managed more and more money for other organizations in a country that was not very well serviced by asset managers, certainly not locally, and they became very successful. So from the initial work of helping the family office, we moved towards really helping the board and the executive team and the asset manager as well in developing their proposition to other asset owners and to improve their organization and their governance internally, moving from one project to another, focusing very much on risk management, for instance, doing reviews of the in-house investment teams on a regular basis to help them moving forward. It's a good example of how you can build something from internal knowledge with a small team and develop it towards being a really multi-family office, helping others to manage money. So it's time to conclude. Key takeaways from the topic of investment governance for family offices. First of all, poor investment governance can lead to huge capital losses, as you have seen in those case studies. It's important that for a single family office, investment decisions are taken in a very orderly way with a strong investment governance in place. And that can lead really to a main difference in terms of investment returns. It's really an important investment for each investment organization, but also for a family office. It's also a way for a family office to get better alignment with the family members and all the different stakeholders. The clearer you are in terms of how you're organized and how you're taking investment decisions, the better the alignment will be. The importance of a well-functioning investment committee is something that can make a huge difference in return. And it's important to find for each organization the right balance between what you do in-house and what you outsource. And there are different models for that. There's not one recipe. So documentation is essential. I said that several times on investment beliefs, investment policy statements, investment committee charter, procedures, etc. There is a lot that long-term asset owners and family offices can learn from the other asset owners that are highly regulated. Luckily, you are not highly regulated, but you can learn from what they are forced to do in terms of documentation and in terms of investment governance to make sure that decision-making is at the best level.